Thanks everybody for coming tonight, and hopefully we'll cover a couple of things that make a difference. What we've been doing the last 3 weeks is talking a bit about things in our lives that keep us from being present, and in a sense of it's almost impossible, I think, to talk about what does it mean to be present. What does that look like? How does that feel? Well, what does the now really sound like? And I love Eckhart Tolle's, brought us this whole concept of, in a way that the now in itself could be a concept of God. And my understanding of, or experience really, of connection with a universal intelligence, or the stillness, or God, if we want to call it that, is that it's something that I can't really describe and can't really talk about. So what we've been doing these last few weeks is talking about how sometimes we're in our behaviors, or in our unconsciousness, and so when we're there, well, we're not here. Does that make sense? And so the first week we talked about complaint, and Lauren and I were just talking about this a couple of minutes ago. It was really easy to talk about because everybody in the room admitted to being a complainer, and that that we get into complaint, and when we're in complaint, we know that we're not really present when we're in complaint, and I wonder if we could close that door. So that was, and the subtleties of complaint and all that. It was pretty easy for us all to recognize, okay, when I'm complaining, I'm not really that present, and even actually when we're in gratitude, sometimes we're thinking about what we're grateful for, so we're kind of filtering it through the mind, and I guess gratitude, though, is a higher level than complaint, but still, gratitude can keep us, I think, out of the moment. So, and we talked about how last week, I think it was, or the week before, how we make up stories, and about life, and so we're in the story, and we've made up stories about ourselves, and it's the whole story thing dovetailed into last week, which is around identity, how we believe we are something, that we're a certain nationality, or we're a father, or we're a son, or we're a brother or sister, or we're not very smart, or we have an idea, and we've kind of bought into those ideas, and we've identified with them, and one of the things I loved about the old days, there was a teacher called Osho, and Osho used to give everybody a name, and they'd let go of their name, which was it's awfully easy to be identified by our names, and kind of be attached to it, and think that's who we are, or identified by what we do for a living, and think that's who we are. And we really, that is a big one, isn't it? What we do for a living. And I think back on my life, I had a tile shop, so I was the tile guy. I was like, That was my thing. I was the tile guy, or it was in a 12-step program, so I was the sober guy, or I was I had children, so I was dad, and my life was around those identities, so nothing wrong or right about all of that. It's just that if we have this desire, we're going to talk about desire in a minute. If we have this idea or this preference to be present, then there is a possibility, I think, if we want to be present, to be conscious and let go of the things that keep us from being present. And belief systems, about everything, life, about right and wrong, good and bad. But I thought tonight we would talk about desire. And it's a tricky one. James and I have been arguing about it for 2 weeks. And it is tricky. And so it was like, how do I realized that desires can almost be like complaint. I'm saying I want something different than the way it is. But ego says, yes, but without desire, where would I be? And well, the truth is, I don't know. Where would I be? But imagine that if I didn't live in desire, I lived in what I imagine each moment was God's will, or the will of whatever was happening now, then it's funny when we talk about this God thing. I'm a little hesitant sometimes because we all have these interpretations or ideas about that, and most of it's stuff that we were programmed as children, so it's hard to talk about the universal intelligence or the quantum field, and there's so many different concepts for that idea of God. And so when I speak of God, I'm not speaking of my Christian upbringing idea of God. I normally speak of God because I don't know how else to call it, that's inclusive. And in the 12-step world, we call it higher power sometimes, and Father of light, or just Father, or the employer. I like employer. I do, because the employer is just like really simple for my mind. It's like, oh, and I still have to deal with my mind. It needs to be tamed a little bit, and it likes employer. And so why would we want to be in the moment? And my experience is that when I'm not in the moment, I'm running the show. And if I'm running the show, it's usually based in my perception of the world. And my perception of the world, from however I got to this, I don't know, is generally that the world's not a safe place. And so my perception of the world, generally, when I'm running the show, I'm being careful, way too careful sometimes, or I'm being fearful, or I'm being, judgmental, or being, not really full of love. I'm being suspicious. I'm being, because I did time on the street, and I was, I have life experiences that are all tied up in my consciousness and in my belief systems. So for me, it just became paramount to figure out this idea of being connected to Source and living from there, or as close to there as possible. Otherwise, when I'm running the show from a selfish point of view, because that's where I'm usually at when I'm looking after business. I've said that I have the Midas touch. Everything I touch turns to shit. From that place, and so for me, that's why I, finally got to a place where I realized I had to surrender all of my stuff. But the question was, what's the stuff? What is it that I want to surrender? What is it what does it look like? And you know, I've spent a lifetime really, or most of it, searching for. I thought I was looking for this connection, but what I've realized is I was looking for what is it that I need to let go of, and how what, you know, I didn't have the language for it, so one of the things that James and I have been talking about is desire, and so one of my favorite books is the Bhagavad Gita, and in the Gita there's a few paragraphs. Is everybody familiar with the Bhagavad Gita? It's a text that was written, nobody really knows, but it's in the center of a huge poem that's really the centerpiece of the Hindu faith. And this piece in this poem that I don't know the name. Does anybody know the name of the poem that the Bhagavad Gita is in? No, okay. So anyway, so it's the longest poem in existence, and it's amazing. And the Bhagavad Gita is in the middle of it, and we're not really certain who wrote it or how it came together. But my friend David Hawkins, who I've never really met, but I consider my friend, Hawkins did Dr. David Hawkins built a scale and to measure vibration from 0 to 1,000. 1,000 was Christ consciousness, and so unconditional love was around 540, and this book, the Bhagavad Gita, in his scale measures up at around a little over 900. So it's an amazing high vibration piece of work, and I dug around in here and found a little bit that I wanted to read, and I thought we'd read this and then meditate for like 10 minutes, because we've been doing that early in the evening. We meditate for about 10 minutes, then we talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and then we meditate again. So are you guys okay if I read a little bit from the Bhagavad Gita? And who has actually ever read this or knows this book? All right. I really recommend it. This one is this translation. I have like 4 of them. Not that I've read them all, but this is written by Stephen Mitchell, and Stephen's really an amazing. He also did translated the. I forget what it is, but anyway, he's good. So I wanted to read this because it kind of covers a bit on desire. So Arjuna is a warrior in this story, and Arjuna is a famous character in Hindu mythology. He's the guy, and Arjuna said, he's talking to Krishna, and Krishna's is God in this story, and so Arjuna said, "How would you describe the man whose wisdom is steadfast, Krishna? How does the wise man speak? How does he sit, stand, and walk?" And Krishna said, when a man gives up all desires, and they're talking, when they say man, they mean all of us. It's an old writing. And when a man gives up all desires that emerge from the mind and rests contented in the self, by the self, he is called a man of firm wisdom. He whose mind is untroubled by any misfortune, whose craving for pleasures has disappeared, who is free from greed, fear, anger, who is unattached to all things, who neither grieves nor rejoices, if good or bad things happen, that man is a man of firm wisdom. Having drawn back all his senses from the objects of sense, as a tortoise draws back into its shell, that man is a man of firm wisdom. Sense objects fade for the abstinent, yet the craving for them continues. But when the craving vanishes, then for someone who has seen the truth. But even the craving vanishes for someone who's seen the truth. At first, although he continually tries to subdue them, the turbulent senses The turbulent senses tear at his mind and violently carry it away. Restraining the senses, disciplined, he should focus his whole mind on me, Krishna, and if you of another faith, whoever we conceive God to be. When the senses are in his control, that man is a man of firm wisdom. If a man keeps dwelling on sense objects, attachment to them arises. From attachment, desire flares up. From desire, anger is born. From anger, confusion follows. From confusion, weakness of memory. Weak memory, weak understanding. Weak understanding is ruin. But the man who is self-controlled, who meets the objects of the senses with neither craving nor aversion, will attain serenity at last. In serenity, all his sorrows disappear at once, forever. When his heart has become serene, his understanding is steadfast. The undisciplined has no wisdom, no one-pointed concentration. With no concentration, no peace. With no peace, where can joy be? When the mind constantly runs after the wandering senses, it drives away wisdom like the wind, blowing a ship off course. And so, Arjuna, when someone is able to withdraw his senses from every object of sensation, that man is a man of firm wisdom. In the night of all beings, the wise man sees only the radiance of the self. But the sense world, where all beings wake, for him is dark as night. The man whom desires enter as rivers flow into the sea, filled yet always unmoving, that man finds perfect peace. Abandoning all desires, acting without craving, free from all thoughts of I and mine, that man finds utter peace. This is the divine state, Arjuna, absorbed in it everywhere, always. Even at the moment of death, he vanishes into God's bliss. Anyway, it's a beautiful book. And the idea that we can live in that state of surrender, of letting go, I think then we're here in this moment. Let's take a minute. I think everybody gets this, but the possibility of meditating together, a meditating period, gives us, I believe, the consciousness of watching the mind. And I talked to a young fellow today who yesterday had told me he doesn't meditate. He stayed overnight last night at the house, and he came in my room about 3 o'clock this afternoon to say goodbye. And I said, remember to meditate. And he said, oh, okay. He had a different tone today than he had last night. And he said, okay, should I get a teacher? And I said, no, you don't need a teacher. Just take 10 minutes each day and meditate. And he said, well, what do I do? So he said that his mind is really busy and it's hard for him to meditate. And I said, well, that we all understand that. And I said, just watch the mind. And he said, that's it. I said, just 10 minutes, just watch the mind and be nice to it. And, acknowledge it and watch it. And then he was just about to leave, and I said, remember, you're not your mind. And he stopped. He said, well, what am I then? So, anyway, you'll find out when you meditate. And and off he went. So we'll see if he meditates. It's funny, because he said, well, I'll wait till I get a place, and then I can set up a corner and really have a really good spot to meditate. And I said, well, no, you meditate tomorrow morning. Wherever you wake up is where you can meditate. So we'll see. It was fun to have that exchange with him. So meditation, I think, is a practice. And the practice brings us closer to our awareness of who we are in each moment, and it does allow the mind us to be conscious of the mind and slow down, or conscious of the mind and it slows down, or maybe, well, I don't know, but anyway, it gets better. So we're going to meditate for about 10 minutes. James will bring us back, and yeah. So maybe think, if we're not thinking of anything, but the whole reading around desire and the gifts that are possible in that. So when we start right now, and just remember that the breath is always in this moment. The breath is always now. And if the mind is really unruly and wants to take us out of the room or back to something in the past or something in the future, come back to the breath. Just breathe in. The breath is always now. Just, if you feel the need to just tell the mind that it's safe, it's okay, we're in a perfectly safe place, and it's nothing to worry about, nothing to do about anything right now. Just be here and breathe. Relax, don't take it too seriously. something came to me in the meditation that our belief in something, say, like a religion or a belief in an idea of a spiritual thing, actually keeps us from experiencing that thing, because in our mind we're believing it to be a certain way, and so the belief actually stands between us and the experience. And for one reason or another, it seems like the world has been designed to, I think, keep us busy, and I think for the most part, when many people weren't educated and weren't literate and only lived to be 35 or 40, I think it worked. But now, there's so many of us asking, about the meaning of life, or, we're living to be much older, and we're all exploring the realms of consciousness, and we're recognizing that, working somewhere in a factory for 35 years and raising a family isn't enough. Well, it doesn't happen anymore. But it's just in the system, how it was designed, with lots of rules and regulations. We got married, and at a young age, and you stayed with that guy, and there was a lot of things put together. I think in many cases in the community we were in by the predominant religion of the community, and it's shifted. And I don't know whether we have this idea that the world is changing and it's becoming a more compassionate place, and there's more consciousness, and people are waking up, and I think for sure there's more people we're all becoming way more curious, like, what is this? What are we doing here? Who am I? And that who am I question is the big question, and a lot of us got there because we rebelled against the idea of who we were told that we were, and we said, no, that doesn't work, and maybe we tried a lot of different things. And I know in my particular case, there was a lot of unrest. I felt somehow incomplete, and I tried to fill that incompleteness with drugs and alcohol. I tried to fill it with relationships. I tried to fill it with work, but none of those things actually filled it. And so my desire generally was for something to fill that void, but travel didn't do it. I've done a lot of experiences in my lifetime. My Harley Davidson did it for a while, but not, it became clear to me after a certain amount of time on the planet that nothing outside of me was going to fill it. And then the experience of going inside and looking at myself, so it also seemed like no amount of prayer and meditation could fill it either. I needed to look at who was I being in my behaviors, who was I, acting out each day, and unconsciously. And so I didn't even realize, and I think my friend Armando's here, and Armando and I were with a teacher for years, and I couldn't actually describe consciousness. I didn't know and maybe I'm a slow learner, but I just didn't understand that for me, consciousness is evolved into this me being aware of when I'm being in my unconsciousness. So if anger comes up, usually anger, it's all because things aren't unfolding as I want them to. It's almost always, if I'm in a behavior, it's because I want something or I don't want something. And I'm trying to control. And so if we, through the process of meditation, through the process of being with teachers, through the process of reading, and if we have the opportunity to see ourselves, then we can see when we're in our behaviors, and see when and when we're in our behaviors, we're not here. And I know that that's an interesting concept, because if we're not here, where the hell are we? But we know that what happens when we're here, when we're really here, there's a sense of calm. There's we start to get like a conscious connection to something that's greater than us, and we feel this peace and contentment, and or maybe it's the absence of stress. It's the absence of the fear that we start to acknowledge, first of all, like, and where we have long periods of time, or even short periods of time, where we're like, wow, I was just there. I was just I wasn't anything, and I was just being me, whoever that is, but not there worrying about whether I was inferior, or I wasn't feeling inferior, or I wasn't feeling superior, I wasn't judging, I wasn't, in those moments, if we're practicing, being conscious can grow and be, and then that's unless we fall in love. And then, it gets really serious. It's like we're in a relationship, and we, that's touchier to live in consciousness in relationship. I don't know if any of you have ever tried it, but it's it can be difficult there, and it can be difficult for me. The most difficult areas of being living in surrender, living in letting go, have been one of the most is in relationship, for sure. Where I'm vulnerable, or I to be there without asking or needing anything. To be with somebody in a just in a giving way, as opposed to in a needing way. And soon enough, if we get to be with somebody, that they're all of our, it's a great school. I mean, being in relationships is an amazing school of consciousness, and we should call it that. Not relationship at all. School of consciousness with so and so, because it brings it up. And the other one for me has been all my misconceptions around money. That is brought up lots of stuff, and it's what a great area to see myself in the area of consciousness or unconsciousness around abundance or worthiness and all of that kind of stuff. And there's a bit of a it's hard to say whether we focus on just being in the presence of the moment, or God as we understand Him, or don't understand Him or her or it, or love as or whether we focus on watching our behaviors so that we can let them go and realize that that's who we have been, and that we, through our behaviors have created our misery, or through our our fears or desires have created our misery. There seems to be a number of schools, that around that. But my feeling is that that the best school is to, for me anyway, is to be in life. To be on the edge and to be experiencing the game of life and in service or in relationship or in business, and that is where I get to see me and how I am with things. And so I wanted to talk a bit about desire. Can anybody have anything that they want to say about how desire, if you get any questions about desire, is it clear or unclear? Thoughts about desire or wanting, or the idea of desire or wanting not actually taking us out of the moment. Anybody?
Is all desire the same?
Well, I think yes, and I think that it's a really tricky one. That's why I wanted to read from the book, because that's the conversation James and I have had for the last couple of weeks. Is all desire the same, and where does desire to come from? And I had a teacher who taught us to have preferences as opposed to desires and hold them lightly. Right, Armando? Yes, and just to hold them lightly, to just, and to not be too caught up in it. Now, the school of manifestation, of making shit happen out there, tells us we got to have a white heat of desire, that we've got to, just force it into existence. And I've studied that school. I read all those books, and especially in business, where I had this idea that I had to create my vision, and it's, I guess, only as I've gotten older that I've realized that I could never create a vision as beautiful as the vision that life will create for me, as long as I have a yes and I step up each day to be in that vision. But I didn't trust life. I wasn't. Does that make sense? I was wanting my way, and a little egocentric, really. Yes.
So I read something that was really beautiful, to think of the tree and the seasons. And the tree loses its leaves in the fall, and then in the spring it grows new ones. And it's like life, it's always coming and going. And if we just trust in that process, everything always comes. Like a flower.
Easy, right?
Every
day. The whole lilies of the field thing, right? That's Christian scripture somewhere that I think Christ said, to watch the lilies of the field, and that the same.
Because the tree doesn't worry that it's not going to come back in the spring. It just is.
Yes. So I don't know, and we get into some big, deep questions around sentient beings and non-sentient beings, and I hear, and we think we're pretty special, right? And the spearhead of all intelligence and in all of the universe, mankind, so what if we were to really surrender and really trust in every way? And it's for me, has been like this question. I can surrender for moments, and it's subtle. It's just so, so subtle. All the teachings have all said, just, trust. And all the parables have said that, you know, if we lose our home, if we lose, just to be in that, and we'll find where it is that we need to be. It'll find us. And yet, boy, I'm not very good at that. You know, I think that I know better. And, you know, so we're certainly living in a higher vibration than we had, you know, in the past. And, you know, we have community, and we have friends, and we have, you know, healthcare, and we have education, and we've really built a much nicer system. And yet, there seems to be, you know, more opportunity not to have things, but to be more connected. Isn't that kind of what we all want? To be more connected? That's maybe a better question. What can anybody tell me? What, you know, why is this, you know, being in an evening like this, you know, talking about consciousness? Why are we here? What do you want? You know? Anybody?
You said come, so I came.
Okay. Mr. Llewellyn, thank you. I love you. Yeah. So
when I was leaving the house, I asked myself why I was coming.
Yes.
And the answer of to be with my family came.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a connection.
Okay. So, yes.
She kind of took the word to life, to be around like-minded people. You know,
So that,
well, it's just nice to be around people that understand the topics that we might talk about here tonight. I know that I spend a lot of time around people that definitely don't think about being connected with the spirit of the universe or peace or calmness or the way that their mind works or anything like that. They have no understanding about that stuff, you know, or they pretend to. So it's nice to be around people that can acknowledge the fact that they don't know everything, for one thing. People that can admit where their flaws are in their character, you know.
yes.
If I'm not aware of my flaws in my character, then I can never work on them.
What I found really humbling is that, you know, this, because I don't actually know. And I know that there's a possibility for us to have a connection, but that the connection is inside, and I know that I can have feelings of peace, but I can't really describe what it is that we're, you know, the whole thing is about. And
I like watching what's next.
yes, okay, that's, so living in the adventure of not knowing. Yeah.
I like watching you.
Yeah.
I like watching everybody. I like watching myself.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, yeah, there you are.
So I agree. I like to be here, to be with you, and to the whole idea of letting go of behavior, so that I believe that lots of times behaviors, especially if they're based in our in fear of not getting enough or losing something, or are dense, you know, and that as we let those go, we just naturally lift up. And I have this idea that I'd like to live in unconditional love, you know, to actually be in that, you know, and maybe that's a delusion, this idea that David wants just to have unconditional love and not feel the other stuff. And the more work I've done, the more I actually seem to feel not dissatisfaction, but feel the pain of life. You know, I mean, it's not all just one this without that, and it has a. Can everybody relate to that? And does anybody feel good all the time? No, eh? No. So I think that's why we come to this, why we read these books and listen to the speakers and you know, Eckhart Tolle over and over and over again, is we'd like to be able to live in that space of peace and bliss and unconditional love on a regular kind of basis. What, Lauren?
Was that desire?
Yes. It's a bit of a bitch, isn't it? Because yeah, I know.
The thing is, desire has driven me towards this in a way.
Yes.
A desire out of suffering, a desire for more peace.
Yes.
Well, where can I find that?
Yes.
So it's always present with whatever we're experiencing.
Say again.
What I think we're all trying to describe is it's always present, whether being in desire or suffering, or joy or bliss, there's always an omnipresence.
And well, for me, if it's a desire, I would like to be more aware of that, not understanding it, but more aware of that consciousness or that higher vibration. And my prayer since I was, in my 20s has been, show me the 5,000-foot view, show me the whole mosaic. And I mean, for almost 40 years, that's been, my prayer, not as daily as it used to be, but it has been, and so that, I don't even know why I was asking for that. Kathy does.
So I'm just reflecting a little bit on the conversation, and I think Lauren nailed it. It is desire, what we're seeking. We're seeking more peace. You know what it is? It's truth. It's truth we're all seeking. Yeah.
I'm just tempted to ask you, so what is the truth?
I think it's different for everybody.
Is it?
Maybe it's not, but I know there's a lot of love in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I too have been feeling a lot of that unconditional love, just in general. And it feels good, and I feel like I'm getting closer to who I'm supposed to be, to who I am, because I've lifted a lot of layers of conditioning and old stories and old shit.
Mm-hmm. So we did the Enlightenment Intensive together,
Yeah.
and the idea of getting to the one, to the stillness, to that moment of where there was the illusion of who I think I am actually moved aside, and we had the experience. I had the experience, yes, and it was this experience of one. It was pretty amazing, so it that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Could we unconditionally love all that though? Unconditionally love the suffering, all the pain, all the things.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's really where it's
Yeah.
at. I mean, to love all things.
It's funny, the mind wants to understand, right? The mind is mine. Probably not you guys, but just kidding. The mind is always saying, what's going on here, and we talked the other day about sometimes I wake up in the morning, and it's like somebody's moved in, and I'm like, holy shit. Where did that come from? And who is that? But we were talking the other day that I've just kind of made peace with the fact that somebody moves in at night, and I don't wake up in bliss. I've seen to recently, more recently than ever, and of course my mind makes up that that's because things are happening, and there's resistance, you know. And I don't know that any of that's true, but
Well, like Ramadas said, when somebody's at the verge of death and they're experiencing all this suffering, that could be the breaking of the ego, the breaking the shell to see things, to be awakening. So I mean, all these things that show us the pain or the suffering is just to experience love, to have unconditional love. Because without that, you cannot love unconditionally, because you'd have no perception of what love would be
mm-hmm.
without that pain.
Yeah, amen.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody relate to the idea that we want to become more clear or connected so that we can accomplish more in this, on this level? You know, I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong or good or bad. There isn't. It's just that has, for many years for me, I was so caught up in the idea that I would be somebody based on my accomplishments, and that seems to have moved off it somewhat. You know, it isn't as strong as, especially after this year, you know, letting go of my business and all of that stuff, and I struggled to hold on to that because my identity was based around what I did, and I wanted to be good at what I did, and I rather than learn a lot of new skills, I thought if I just got closer to God, or got closer to the moment, or closer to being clear, or wasn't caught up in fear, that I would be able to be better at what I did. So it was laced with this desire. You know, it was like thinly, the texture of my life actually was around this desire to be more in my accomplishments and what I did, and so that if I had a closer relationship with this power of the moment, that I could then be able to accomplish more. I know it seems a little perverted, but that's where, you know, and I've recognized it more in the last little while, that I had been hoping to gain access so that I could have more fun here, in a way, or accomplish more, or be seen as more, or have a newer Harley or something, and it seems to have, anyway. Can anybody relate to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I can exactly like that. I feel like the more I understand about my own, let's say, desires or attachments or complaints and things, the more I can understand about the people that I interact with. And it makes it easier for me personally to interact with people, because I hold on to a lot of judgments about the way that people treat me. I think people should behave a certain way, and when they don't, then I get all upset. Right? But the more I can identify with the fact that I behave the same way that other people behave, the more tolerance I have for other people, it opens a wider gate for me in my personal relationships. I can become a more peaceful person.
Yeah. Do you want to be a more peaceful person?
I want to be able to love people and treat people better than I have.
Yeah, I think that's admirable. I think that me too. So anyway, we're dancing around in the desire topic, and I think that it's clear that that desire brings us a certain distance, and
I guess I just keep getting caught up in like this between like desire and surrender.
yes,
Where I can desire things that I might not actually need, or I can desire to accomplish things, or I can desire to achieve things. And so yeah, maybe I am better off like surrendering those so I can be more present in the moment, or be more connected to source. But at the same time, you know, desire has a lot of components or different ways you can look at it, or different ways that it can channel, you know, an energy, whether it be like helping someone. You can have a desire to help people, but people aren't helped if you don't do anything. You have to like, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but you have to, there has to be some action behind, and sometimes I feel like that's driven by desire.
So if we want to help people, is there something behind that? We want to help people so that...
Well, I guess a basic, I mean, there could be many ways. It's you want to reduce human suffering, or you see someone in pain, or you see someone struggling and would like to help them, or you see injustice or inequality and you would like to help those people have.
So there's nothing in the so that that's for you.
Okay.
Is there?
Well,
I mean, do we ever want to help people so that we feel better about ourselves, or so that we,
absolutely, yeah.
so that we look better? Do so, you know, so that we get paid more, so that, you know, I'm not saying that that's all of it. There's, it's just when you were speaking, I was thinking that, I mean, here we're all on this path, and I mean, how far do we want to go on the path? You know, where is it that we want to get to? I mean, when I first sobered up in the 12-step world, all I wanted to do was pay the rent, and get, you know, make the pain stop, and you know, I was in desperation can be motivation, but so. You know, because I mean, the root of what we're talking about is kind of tonight. You know, is us being on a spiritual path, and but why? And Lauren said that there is a desire to be on the spiritual path, but I'm wondering, what is it that we're looking for on the spiritual path? Why do we do this? Is there a why? Yes.
And bring them good feelings. And that's good enough for me.
All right. Yeah.
Just to watch something happen inside somebody, love to grow and make them feel better in a moment. That's good enough.
Yeah. I feel, as we're doing this, I'm feeling like, man, we're just stirring up shit here, because it's. I hope nobody came here for answers.
I wasn't looking for a spiritual path. When I found this path, wasn't what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I just ended up on it.
It's you walked in the wrong door.
I just walked the wrong way. I was like, oh, I'm here now. I wasn't looking for it
I think some of us
in any way.
feel that it's been a lifelong thing. I remember being a kid, like really, maybe even preteen, and thinking, what's going on here? You know, there's something, you know, this isn't, you know, I knew there was something else. And I remember even being younger than that, in my bed with a flashlight, reading the New Testament, because it was the only spiritual book that I knew. I mean, we didn't have a lot of spiritual books in my house. Or we did, I didn't know them, you know, it wasn't that kind of house, but I remember doing that because I was wanting something.
I think the question is, when we ask a question to God, source, whatever it is, we'll receive an answer in some form. So I asked, who am I? Why am I here? And that's what pulled me to this path. So it's really just part of the law of attraction, universal law. You ask, you'll be shown a certain path, you'll be shown something. And each of us ask questions daily, whether we're conscious of it or not.
So I hear you, and what I see in it is that we can get caught in the thinking of it, or the interpretation, and when I'm in the interpretation or I'm in the understanding, I'm not here. I'm in my mind.
That's what I mean. I just asked the question, and that's what brought me to here.
Mm-hmm.
So the universe, God, whatever, showed me a path, and I walked down it.
Yes. Well, I've been with you for the last year. It hasn't quite been that simple.
No, it's that path.
And why do you stay? Why do you keep
I don't
doing
know,
it?
because I haven't asked for anything else.
Yeah. Do you have more questions?
No, for me, I've just kind of like, I came to the place of just surrendering to see what's next, allowing the universe to guide me, God to guide me in whatever form that is.
So you don't have any desires?
I don't know. Sometimes I do, in relating maybe, but then when I get to there, I'm like, oh, that's not what I was looking for.
I have a desire that we keep the house cleaner.
And I see it clean.
That's right. So that's called delusion, and it's that's a whole other night, whole other topic.
I don't know, look, I end up in really unusual places by just allowing life to unfold.
So let's stop for a minute, because for a lot of us, we're not living in that high, lofty place. And with some, people that could be watching as well that are dealing with, addiction, or dealing with, so how does it deep in their desires, or deep in their dissatisfaction, or deep in I wanted to kind of root a little bit of that out, so that because often the results of that life are not very satisfying. How do we get to a place where we're actually not seeing anything wrong with the moment? Maybe we're lonely. Has anybody ever been lonely? And maybe we're actually judging lonely, as opposed to accepting lonely. Maybe we're saying, I don't want to be lonely. And not wanting to be lonely, I believe, denies and maybe keeps us in that state. I don't necessarily 100% understand this recipe, but I married a woman once, and she taught me acceptance, awareness, acceptance, change. So when I'm feeling something, because we're kind of feeling beings, aren't we? And lonely is a feeling. Is it a feeling? Kind of, I don't know if it comes in the feeling category, but it's a kind of a mix of feelings, isn't it? It's like jealousy. Well, it's not as bad as jealousy. We can talk about that in a minute. But lonely is a mix of feelings, and so when we're feeling things, and if we become aware of them, and that's what I was hoping to do these evenings, was to bring us into consciousness of stuff so that we can accept it. And it then lifts up and changes on its own, as opposed to us having to do anything with it. So when I'm sad, mad, or glad, right, to just acknowledge that feeling. And I know that's kind of like, consciousness 101, but most of us don't know what's going on inside of us. We don't know if we're feeling it. Desire is almost can be another word for complaint, because we want life to be different. In my 12-step teachings, it says that we accept life on life's terms, as it is. Because mostly I'm saying no to life if I'm, even to loneliness. If I feel lonely, yes, I can do something, but I can't really do something that, has anybody ever been lonely in a crowd? So going to a movie doesn't fix my loneliness. Going out for drinks doesn't fix it really. Going out for drinks doesn't fix anything for me. But so I just see that the acceptance, even of desire, is seems to be the trick, isn't it? To say yes, okay, I'm feeling a desire, as opposed to making desire right or wrong. And then it has the opportunity to move, as opposed to stay in the wanting, you know. I've heard that the wanting something is actually telling the moment that we don't have it, and that wanting it brings more wanting it. Does that make sense? You know, is anybody? Oh, I think relationships are a good topic, because often, you know, it's not been easy for us to say to be single, but the more I want to, you know, or say, look, I need to be with somebody. Often, I've ended up in situations that maybe weren't that wise, and you know, or been, you know, I've pushed myself to be with somebody, as opposed to just surrendering and letting go of that want or that desire. I mean, those are kind of fundamental desires that, you know, that for me, I've just recognized that they're not my business anymore. Do you know what I mean? I've just turned it over. Said, okay, that's not my business. My finances, my relationship, those things are. Doesn't mean that I don't fret over it. I have to be real careful, because James and I are roommates, and he knows I fret over money sometimes. But anyway, so wanting and desiring. Let's contemplate it. You know, let's spend some time this week in contemplation. Is it, you know, is it taking us out of the moment? And what does being present in the moment look like? You know, and when we're feeling that connection to our higher power, to God as we understand Him, and universal intelligence in the moment. Do many of us feel like we're actually feeling that connection very often?
I do a lot of times through the day.
Do you?
All the time, but momentarily through the day. I spend my time meditating, or ground myself as I go and relax.
You meditating every day?
Yeah, I meditate and practice mindfulness all the time.
Nice. Yeah. It kind of comes and goes. I don't feel it's like some days it's more than others. James, you going to say something?
No, I was just kind of mimicking you when you say you feel it. It's the up and down.
Yes.
The cycle, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's just a lot of this is about knowing yourself. You know, the clearer you get with yourself, the more you invite self-love in, the closer I feel connected with God.
Oh,
And so
nice.
That connection's like a drug. That feeling's like a drug. You start desire that feeling more than I desire to get higher, drunk, or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Not really.
Armando, you feel it sometimes?
Yeah, just like James was saying, comes and goes, and you know, I think what I can say is, like, sometimes I feel like I'm in the flow.
Yes.
I'm in a flow where I feel connected with what I'm doing and the people around me, and I just feel really good. You know, feel grounded and peaceful inside, and then a lot of the time I feel like I'm striving or have that desire to know who I am without the fear of making a mistake, or, you know, being judged, or
being wrong.
Being wrong, yeah, exactly. So so I'm in and out of that feeling of flow or connection, I guess. And I meditate pretty regularly as well, and actually meditate every day with my students and at school, and meditation for me is like lately is times when I feel least connected. So what I find is I feel more connected when I'm doing and I'm in service.
Yes.
I'm giving, because I get out of my head and I know I'm clear about what it is that I'm offering in this moment, and you know, whether it's a tutoring session or I'm in the classroom or whatever, or interacting with kids in the hallway, whatever it is, that if I'm just being there for the moment, then
So when you're in service,
yeah,
you feel more connected.
I do, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
We've heard that. Yeah. I mean, that is, for me, I think it's one of the legs to, you know, spiritual connection is you know, is service, meditation, lifelong learning, prayer.
And I feel like service is a good way for me to, like I said, get out of my head. So I'm taking the focus off myself, where I'm not, you know, good enough yet or whatever it is.
So can we call service love?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So when you're in service in your classroom, is this what you're talking about?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Lucky kids.
Yeah, I'm lucky, I feel.
Yeah, of course.
Super lucky
Yeah.
to be with them. Yeah, it's amazing.
How old are they?
Well, I get to be with the youngest to the oldest. So
Wow.
4
Wow.
years old to 19 or so. So it's pretty special.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're amazing. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here.
And you know, I'll be honest, I have a mindfulness class to give tomorrow to the K to grade 6 class. And you know, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do with them, right? Like what the 15-minute lesson is going to be. So that's where I kind of go, okay, like I ask for assistance to offer something, but when I show up, and when I feel I'm ready and prepared, then I feel good and grounded. But when I don't feel prepared, then I go into that place of fear a little bit, right? Of, well, you know, what if it's not fun for them, or what if they don't connect with it? Then I get worried. Then the worry starts, right? So I go in and out of that.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's funny, when I try to prepare is when I feel fear. When I go in without being prepared and allow whatever that moment is to be is when I'm not afraid. To be present in what comes up in that moment. Because today I recognize that, and even yesterday I was like trying to create all these ideas of how I'm going to do something, or how I'm going to present something, and I was so afraid of even stepping into that. I was like, I don't want to do that. That's not where I want to be now. But the instant I dropped away of like recognizing that, no, I'm going to be there in whatever comes up and what comes to that moment. And that's when I stopped being afraid.
Just stop being so amazing, will you? Yeah, for those of you who don't know, James is working on a project where the project is working on him, or through him, and it is coming together. It's pretty amazing, and he has a meeting with a bunch of people tomorrow, and I said, you know, you have to be prepared. And anyway, he told me today, you know, fuck you, David. I'm just gonna wing it, which, you know.
And it's not even me winging it, it's just listening, being receptive.
Yeah. Pat, do you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, I think I agree with what everyone has talked about so far, and you know, just feeling that connection can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different settings. You know, it could be connection to self, connection to others, was mentioning, serving is feeling that connection, and also just communicating with other people. That's a big thing too. And I feel like I feel that connection. I feel that in a lot of different situations when I'm meditating. So that's whenever that's connection to self. When I'm doing some volunteer stuff, which I do, so that service, talking with people, talking with my wife, like you just feel that connection where you establish that flow, and you just feel that connection, and it can also feel. Yesterday we were talking a little bit about climbing mountains, and feel that when I'm on that narrow ridge where it's 100% mindfulness, that no other thought is coming to my mind, because it's going to be fatal if it comes to my mind. Yeah, I think in a lot of different situations, even at the gym working out, you're lifting some weight, and you can still feel that connection while doing that.
David, you just love what people say back.
What?
And it's every time people talk about that, riding their motorcycle or something.
Well, it's true though. Like, I mean, we all know that like extreme sports, what happens is that we're in the moment. There's no room for anything else, and it's a different connection than the connection that comes through consciousness and meditation. Knowing ourselves. I mean, I jumped out of airplanes and only twice, but still, I had to go back to see if it was really that scary. But you totally get present, and same with skiing, and I mean there's different things that on my motorcycle, and I think though that that the difference in that presence, that mindfulness that you're talking about, and the connection that happens, and I think that we love extreme sports because of that. That's the part we love, is that when we're there, when it's like, holy shit, there's nowhere else to be. You're not thinking about cooking dinner, when you're on the side of a mountain.
And I think you can. Yeah, I agree with that. There's difference in connections with that, but you can feel that while being on the side of the mountain, but you can also feel that while going for a easy walk around town. Right? You just practice that mindfulness where you're mindful of
I think
leaves and
that if we have a meditation practice, or contemplation practice, but like a meditation where we learn the feel of that connection. It's like the road that we're traveling on inside gets, beaten down a bit. We start to know what the connection feels like. I think we can have it everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, and unless we're upset, where somebody cuts us off in traffic. But I mean, for the most part, we can be in that state through the practice of meditation, and we don't have to, be snowboarding in Alaska.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's one of the point of the meditation is not when you're meditating in those 10, 15, 20 minutes to be aware of yourself, is to that's more like a training for rest of your life and rest of your day.
Yes.
And you can be meditating even in sitting in traffic, or even if there's a lot of chaos, and even when you feel angry, you can use those skills you've developed by using that meditation training, which you try to do daily, and try to feel that connection, so you can get out of that anger, you can get out of
Yeah.
whatever feelings, negative feelings you are experiencing.
When we use the breath to bring us into the moment in meditation, and that becomes a practice, we can use the breath then to do that anywhere, at any time, and
there's a lot of scientific basis of that too. They have been talking about the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. So if take a breath, count it to maybe 4, but then exhale longer, because then the parasympathetic system kicks in a bit longer. So that's rest and digest, and calms you down a bit more. So yeah, there's biological basis for that too.
It's like seeing patterns. Even breathing is a pattern. And if you meditate, you can see the pattern of the mind. And then even in life, you can start to see the pattern of life and how everybody interacts and you start to watch things and how things
So
actually.
when you say you, do you mean you or me? Are we saying I?
I think everyone.
Well,
When we start to meditate.
well, let's see if we can keep it personal, because it's, you know, what happens. Yes.
When I see the patterns, I start to see
Yes.
patterns of how I am with people, how I fall into different thoughts, how I fall into different experiences, and then also how I relate to
Mm-hmm.
people. I start to see that pattern.
Mm-hmm. Right on. We haven't heard from you at all, and I don't know your name, so yes.
Oh, hi, I'm Marshall.
Hi, Marshall. Welcome.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this evening, and you know, I don't have a Harley, but I have a Kawasaki.
Yes.
And when we were discussing, you're talking about, you know, the desire to help others. I had an incident this summer when I was riding out to Vancouver, and I stopped at a gas station. I was filling up, and I got a paper towel to wipe my windshield. And this other guy on a motorcycle pulled up behind me, and you know, real biker guy type of guy, because I'm just a touring guy. And he came over and he said, you know, you shouldn't really be doing that. And I said, what? He said, you know, you shouldn't use paper towel on that windshield. It's not designed for that. You know, you should use a cloth and all this. And
Of course, he's right.
he absolutely right. But you know, I didn't think too much. But you know, when you get on your bike and you have time to think, you know,
Yeah.
to have ear pods or something. But anyway, so I was thinking, why did he come over to me?
It's
You
very
know?
very generous.
It
generous.
was, and
Yeah.
to me that was an altruistic thing.
Yes.
There's no need for him to come over and help me out or say anything. I
Yes.
just scratched up my windshield and he could have gone on his way.
Yeah.
But to me it said something about human nature, is that we do want to help others, you know. And so that's a good desire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's it's interesting. You know, I've really enjoyed so much that we've talked about tonight. Sort of all over the place, but
It has been a little all over the place. It has been.
yeah, no, it's really good.
Yeah. Do you know what would be fun before we finish? Has anybody got anything that they feel isn't working?
I feel like an asshole right now. Because I seem to throw my meditation practice out between 8 and 4 Monday through Friday. That's
Yeah.
what it feels like right now.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
So,
That I'm not being of service, that I'm... Why are you bothering me?
do you love your work?
Yeah, what? Yes, but it's been too much lately.
Yes, but okay. Yeah.
Just saying it.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't feel of service. I feel more of, this is a burden, you're asking too much of
Well.
me.
That's a. I mean, that's what a deep pool this is. It's a really deep pool. And do you mind if we play in it just a bit?
Sure.
How often in life do we go forward or stay in something out of our conditioned beliefs, out of an idea of responsibility or an idea of a commitment that we've made that maybe we don't need to even stick to anymore. If it's changed, it's already shifted, and yet we haven't moved with it. We're then in compromise, and compromise seems to lead to resentment, and but we get ourselves stuck, don't we?
Yeah, I've been stuck before, and I don't relate this to that. Maybe I'm just not seeing it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well.
But I feel like I just need a bit of a break from it and go back with the mentality. Because even yesterday I was on the call and listening to someone provide service to someone, and I thought, wow, they're being so polite. And I thought, have I forgotten everything about customer service altogether?
about how to really be helpful and just noticing
Mm-hmm.
how really calm and helpful they seemed. And I thought, oh yeah, I can do better. I used to do that.
So what you said though earlier is that maybe you're not there in love, like you're at work and somehow lost the juice in it, or the.
Yeah, I think I'm just tired.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
long-term tired.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you work hard. It seems that you're in there. You must either love it or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I think I do.
Do you?
I do love it.
Okay. All right. Anybody else got anything that's like a situation, something that's not working? That, that we're not happy with, somebody leave you? anything that's, what's going on that we want to just share, that we wish was different?
I wish one of my closest friends wasn't a heavy addict the way that she is, so that my life would be a little bit easier. I wish that circumstances, the personal relationship would, yeah. And so I get angry with a lot of stuff, I take it out on that person, I take it out on myself, with my desire for her to be somebody different, behave differently.
That's real, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. It's funny around relating, the idea that we feel that we love somebody if they just change, or they be a little bit different, or even the same. I think in work too, that it would be better if it was just not the way it is, and so it's a real trick to live in acceptance of what's happening, or change it, And I don't know about you guys, but I found that I've stayed in things way beyond when it was done, because I had judgments around failure. I had judgments around, not being good enough, or mostly there were judgments on me, wanting to help or wanting to make it different, or thinking that I could, or my experience sometimes in relationship has been that I've been with somebody and she wanted me to be different, and I did what I could to be different instead of just being me. Do you know what I mean? And it didn't never seem to, because we were just two actors in a way, in a relating, and yeah. So she is exactly where she's supposed to be, isn't she? Yeah, she's living her life, and it's hard to say where we can affect change, isn't it? My mother, towards the, pardon me?
God bless her soul.
God bless her soul, that's right, yes, exactly. My mother, not in my younger years, but in my later years, I believe we used to say she was a prayer warrior. This woman was a praying woman, and all four of her sons got recovery from addiction and alcoholism, and we really acknowledged in our family that somehow that and I don't understand all that stuff, but I believe that we can maybe not affect change, but we can lift people up so that they can see themselves. And I don't know about that stuff, but I believe that we can help people through prayer, and that's There we go. Do you know what? Oh my gosh. Sorry, you guys. Just like that. It got away on me. So let's meditate for 10 minutes, and we'll just we'll finish. And I meant to be finished a little earlier. Hope you guys are all okay with that. So James is going to keep the 10 minutes again, and just, just drop in and maybe when you meditate to this evening, at the end of this evening, just look at anything. If anything's coming up, if there's anything that we're holding on to, or that we have resistance to, or that we're wanting to change, or that we're unhappy with, or angry with, it is what it is. And imagine that if we could be in a state of acceptance of all of those things in each moment, not to make them wrong, but just to recognize, not to make them wrong, and just to recognize that it can be a choice with awareness. If we're conscious of what's happening, we're conscious of our wants and our desires for things to be different than they are in the moment, whether those wants or desires are based in fear, or whether they're based in the idea that if we have more, we'll be more. Just accept them, and they can shift on their own. And when we sit together, just breathe, follow the breath. Just recognize that when we're in the breath, we're in the moment. Take your time. Come back when you're ready. Just a couple of quick things in closing. I think one of the themes tonight is that service was pretty much agreed on. Brings us into love, into the moment. And then I just wanted to mention that's I think one of the quickest ways to really get out of ourselves is through helping others, through carrying a message of love and consciousness and awareness, lifting people up with our love. And the other piece of this is to see our behaviors and our patterns, and so that we can surrender them, so that we can let them go, so that we can become aware, accept them, and surrender them. And through that, we come into this moment. And my thought is that being in the moment allows us to access our full potential, so that we can be the servant that we want to be, however we want to serve, and not be in a space of worrying about whether we're getting enough or not, but how can we serve in a bigger way. So that, I believe, is for most of us what we really want, is to give. And I think we become bigger givers as we're closer to living in the moment. So thank you so much for patiently sitting on that our stools, and hopefully we'll keep you too long. And just a thought, if sometimes we have blind spots. If anybody wants to ever have just a one-on-one, or wants to spend time talking about consciousness, or I'm available for that. And I'd love it if when you go home, if you maybe look at this video and make a comment, and it helps with to spread it a little bit. That would be fun. And thanks so much for coming. We have 3 more nights that we're going to do this, and it'd be great if you come back or share it with friends, and we'll see you again. So, love you guys. Thanks for giving me a great evening tonight. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye.